Here is my favorite tweet of Larry King's from all time. I've never forgotten it, and he tweeted this 3 years ago. FDR, great president, but for the life of me, I don't know what Delano means. It is like a parody account, and it is so worth it. He's the best at Twitter. You can buy me radishes any day. That's another tweet that I remember from his incredible account.
Radishes. So we have some follow-up from the last episode. We're getting a little bit more conversation with listeners. In our last episode, we asked if anyone could help us find a pre-film bumper clip that had been referenced in one of the sketches. And a few people wrote in having found it, but it was Tim from Chicagoland who was the first.
Yes, Tim noticed that the song that Joel and the Bots are doing is a version of the mid-1980s General Cinema snack theme. And it was an ad shown before movies by the General Cinema chain. We've added a link to the clip in our show notes, and who knows, maybe you'll hear that delightful jingle now. You might not, though.
But other than that, there hasn't been too much new with MST3K.
Oh, there's let's see. There was a big live show that united the Trace and Frank doing the Mads, and Joel was there, and the Riff Tracks crew, including like Bridget and Mary Jo, who are essentially like lady Riff Tracks, because like whenever there's like a subject that's specifically about women, Mary Jo and Bridget Nelson are actually like doing those shorts.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, nor I, until like I looked into it, and it's like, yeah, they're quite a fun team. So there was that. What else was there? Someone probably, I think someone actually made a PSA about silence in movie theaters that featured a Tom Servo, a really good Tom Servo puppet. There was 14 new episodes of the show made. And where was that nice center?
Wait, there's 14 new episodes?
Yeah, which is weird. I don't know where to look for it. I consulted the Comedy Network here in Canada and the Sci-Fi Channel, and we didn't have either of those things on there.
Well, I guess it's just not available to people generally.
It would actually be kind of a neat thing is that if they make the season 14, or season 11, sorry, and it's only available on KTMA. That would be kind of a nice touch. You can only get it on public access.
So that was our our poor comedy bit on pretending not to be aware of the fact that some of the biggest news in a decade has hit the MST3K fandom, and that is new episodes.
Yeah, we've got 14 brand new episodes after a long period of silence that included there was that brief video that Mike and the Bots did for a PlayStation game, or that time that Mike and the Bots showed up on. There was a sports show that I'm totally blanking on right now. Oh well, but yeah, this is it. This is the biggest mystery science news in a long, long time.
And have you been watching some of the episodes?
Yeah, as of recording, I've seen 4 episodes, and overall, I like it. They get the tone of the show right. What about you?
I think it's delightful, and I'm surprised that I enjoy it so much because I have a very complex relationship with nostalgia. I am very suspicious of it, and for the most part, I found all of the Netflix revivals to be a bit empty, and they have kind of made me sad. Even when they were well done, like the Wet Hot American Summer revamp. Let me think of some of the other ones.
Oh, there was Arrested Development.
Yeah, that was also, it felt a little limp to me. But it's still, I don't know. I think maybe it's because there's a different host. Like there's just different people involved, and that makes it like a variation on a theme rather than kind of like a naked rehash.
Yeah. And I do like that, like this revival has been kind of shepherded by Joel as kind of as like a creative overseer of this whole thing. And there have been some people involved in the writing room, like Bill Corbett and I think Mary Jo Pehl as well, are in the writing staff. So that there is some of the old there, but I'm glad you brought up the host. Like, I was really excited about the revival, and perhaps foolishly, I just kind of assumed, oh, the show's coming back, and Joel's the face of all the announcements about the show. So we're going to have like a middle-aged Joel Hodgson, and I don't know. I guess Trace and either Josh or Frank are going to be Serpo, and like that's fine with me. This is great. And then there were two like announcements. One was that the new host was going to be Jonah Ray, and the other was that in the writing staff was one Ernest Cline, and I sort of felt like I had wished for Noon Mystery Science Theater from a monkey's paw, because Ernest Cline is the author of one of the worst novels I have ever read, and Jonah Ray is a stand-up and podcaster that I have never enjoyed.
Oh boy!
So I was really, really hesitant about it, and I I think the writing for the show has been sharp in like all four episodes that I've watched at this point. And I think Jonah's really likable as the host. Like, he was one of the first things that I responded to. I think he's great. He's a worthy successor to Joel and Mike.
Yeah, and we are going to do one of the Netflix episodes for our next podcast. We haven't decided what it's going to be, and we might leave it up to the randomizer to decide for us. But we're definitely going to be talking about the new Netflix series in more detail coming up soon.
Yes, from what I understand, we've left it now to our listeners. Essentially, the phone lines are open. So if they call us in the 2 hours or so that we're recording, they get to decide what episode it is. That's more or less what's happening, Chris, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Our operators are standing by.
That's right. Dry Lips from Campus Sissing is calling in. Oh, I screwed that up. Anyway, I was going to do a Larry King bit, and then I realized I was talking into my coffee mug and not the microphone, which is a very Larry King move, come to think of it. Johnny from Rochester, hello.
This time we watched Season 10, Episode 4, Future War. In the prologue, a very 90s-looking trio cautiously tiptoe through what looks like an old barn at dusk. Hey, is that Jean-Claude Van Damme?
Yeah, it's more like Jean-Claude Gosh Darn.
And we learn by voiceover that they are on the trail of, quote, dinosaur-like creatures of various ages, shapes, and sizes. Spoiler alert, they're all orange T-Rexes. The credits cut to a vaguely Star Wars-like spaceship where sirens and air hatches convey emergency. On to movie 3. A T-Rex and a heavily mulleted ripoff of the Terminator chase down our action hero lookalike into an empty box factory. Our hero manages to escape after much righteous kickboxing, only to get run over by a nun. Said nun, or nun in training as it turns out, is Annie, a former junkie prostitute who brings our hero to the friendly neighborhood rehab center that helped her get off the streets. Annie and the Runaway, as he's known, do a Tarzan and Jane routine until he reveals that he's from outer space. And also, he was harvested from Earth's past to toil as a slave in the Master's sugar caves before escaping to Earth. Who or what the Masters are, we never find out, other than they don't have thumbs and that they're into cool shit like spaceships and dinosaurs and cyborgs. The Runaway is also heavily conversant with the King James Bible and considers the Earth to be literal heaven. His simple faith unsettles Annie, whose sole character trait up to this point has been kvetching over her commitment to the sisterhood. In any event, after a series of hilarious T-Rex attacks, our heroes are taken in for questioning by the police, and the Runaway is detained indefinitely. Rightfully dismissive of the police's ability to hold their own in a dinosaur/cyborg invasion, Annie recruits some not very convincing gang members to defeat the aliens. The movie lurches to its denouement in the light-shafted confusion room of the prologue, where Annie, the Runaway, and their heavily flanneled musketeers dynamite the remaining dinosaurs. The film ends with Annie taking her nun vows while the Runaway stares into the middle distance. Oh, psych! A Robert Z'Dar cyborg literally crashes the ceremony, and after the last of many kickbox fights, he gets blowed up, and the Runaway and Annie become counselors for runaway teens? Well, that's what happened in the movie, Adam. What was going on in the host segments?
What happened on the Satellite Love? Oh, we get to get into this. All right, so the show begins with an extended riff on 3 times a lady, where computer analysis reveals Mike Nelson is in fact 8 times a lady. After the break, Pearl has dosed the bots with LSD, while Brain Guy and Bobo attempt Jimi Hendrix-style rockouts, but of course, nobody in the cast knows how to play guitar, so keen ears may note, and even not so keen ears may note, that it's just like the sound of a synclavier synthesizer. At least I think I'm pronouncing that correctly. Overdubbing kind of fake guitar sounds. And that goes on for a really long time. That sketch does feel longer than the movie. But hey, then we get to the movie, and that's fun. And segment 2 starts, and Tom has Mike rig him up some legs so he can challenge Gypsy to a kickboxing match. And Gypsy has one creepy mannequin leg that she dispatches Tom with in one kick. And it's kind of like that video where Danzig is cold-cocked with one punch, and that was funny. I like that video where Danzig is cold-cocked. And then after, Mike and the bots thank Pearl for not killing them, but the joke is that on Earth, in the Castle Forrester, she was totally going to kill them with a missile. And you'd think that would just be like a one-off line. But that sketch goes on for, I'm going to approximate 10 hours. Segment 4 starts with Crow dressed as Droppy the Water Droplet to give facts about water. I'm not sure why. And finally, Mike dons a fake chin. Brain Guy and Bobo, believing their own hype as musical fabulous guys, are off on tour or something. It's not really clear. Pearl then blows them up real good, like those farmer characters from SCTV. Beth, why did we watch this episode, and why didn't we just watch Future War, as I eerily suggested last episode?
Well, first of all, it was taken out of our hands by the randomizer, so we just had to go along. But also, recently, Jim Vorel of Paste Magazine rated all 177 episodes of MST3K up to this point. This is before the Netflix drop. And he put Future War at number 9, which is 2 spots above Teenagers from Outer Space.
Wait, what?
Well, I have many problems with that list. The biggest one being that Zombie Nightmare isn't in the top 10. So
that's also absurd. Like that Zombie Nightmare and Teenagers from Outer Space are not in the top 10. It's like, that's crazy. What was number 1? Do you remember?
Final Sacrifice.
Again, I'm not feeling that one.
I don't know. I think I might have picked up something in your tone, Adam, that you weren't too impressed by the host segments.
No, although I am looking a bit on who is Jim Vorel, and I'm looking actually on his profile right now for Rotten Tomatoes. Let's see. There's the first review here is 82%, a fresh rating for. Oh, look, it's for Sharknado. He recommends Sharknado, and what does he say here? The quote is, "For what it is, Sharknado does what it's supposed to do better than almost all of its peers." That's right. All of the weather-based shark movies, Sharknado, the first one, is better than that as of 2013. This is not a trustworthy source, because yes. Here's a hot take for you. I think this is the worst episode we've seen for the 4 that we've watched. Maybe that's not so hot because we've watched 4, but still, this was tough. This was I just find it so weird because like last episode, I remember saying just kind of as a goof is like why even riff this movie? This sounds like something that would be fun to watch on its own. And I was right. I would have much rather watched Future War because I was delighted by the movie. But
the movie's amazing.
Yeah, but this episode and particularly the host segments are a rough go. Well, I was going to say, we spent a lot of time talking about something unpleasant, so I think now is a good time to talk about dinosaurs.
And it seems appropriate that we're talking about dinosaurs because of our new mascot, Curtis the Planter.
Now, you might want to walk us through that one.
So I was feeling a little bit crafty one day, and I took an old Diplodocus plastic figurine and I spray painted him copper and I chiseled off his back and I stuck a couple air plants in it. And it is adorable. And my daughter, who is 3, named him Curtis.
I love that for a number of reasons. One of my closest friends in the world, his name is Curtis, and no one is less dinosaur-like than that lovely guy. But I can also think of no more atypical for a dinosaur, a name than Curtis. That's perfect.
Even better, my daughter thinks Curtis is a girl's name.
Aw.
So she refers to the dinosaur as she, but I can't help it. Curtis for me is a boy, so.
Well, maybe Curtis is her surname.
Okay, maybe she could just be a gender indeterminate dinosaur.
Yeah. There's nothing Curtis can't do.
One of the best things about this movie, I think, is the fact that there are dinosaurs in it for no particular reason other than dinosaurs are awesome. And I think the movie was trying to just kind of float along the 90s dinosaur craze that was still pretty strong in 1997 when this movie was made. So the director, this was his first movie. He would end up going on to do some episodes of Robot Chicken and Scary Movie. Yeah, and Scary Movie 2.
Oh, man.
The Lawnmower Man.
What?
Yes.
Oh, that's a topic for another day, friends.
His name's Anthony Dublin or Anthony Dublin. I'm not too sure which. And before he did this movie, and this is very revealing, he did special effects for Carnosaur, which, Adam, I understand you might have an interesting relationship to that movie.
Well, I have a soft spot for Carnosaur just because there was a long time running gag with myself and my friends in high school that Richard Karn from TV's Home Improvement, Al Borland, had been bitten by a dinosaur, so when the moon was full, he became the Carnosaur. This amused 17-year-old me to no end, even when everyone lost interest. But yeah, I remember, like, my dad rented the movie Carnosaur thinking this would be a great movie, and as a child, I think I got to about the point where the Carnosaurs end up as like eggs in a shopping mart and someone buys the eggs and now there's dinosaurs in your fridge. It was at that point in the movie where I was like, nope, this movie sucks. I don't want to watch another moment of it. I'm going to play on my Tiger handheld. Dads just love Carnosaur.
Yeah, there's only been 4 episodes and I feel like I'm talking about my dad a lot, but he's kind of close to my relationship with movies because he's the one who rented them most of the time. And he had this uncanny ability to pick the worst movie off the new releases shelf. And so one day he brought home Carnosaur, probably because he knew I was a big fan of Jurassic Park and was probably not expecting tween me to be utterly insulted by the very idea that I would watch something like Carnosaur, which was clearly inferior to the Jurassic Park.
Yeah, dads love Carnosaur, but like I think we've all had like similar experiences of this. Like I've always loved the Christopher Reeve Superman, and inexplicably as a gift when I was, I think, 9, I received a VHS copy of Meteor Man because you like that Superman movie so much.
This is close enough, right?
Yep. Oh, you love Who Framed Roger Rabbit? Here's a copy of Cool World. Oh, jeez.
Oh, you loved Armageddon? Here's Deep Impact.
Yeah, I love that Armageddon is one of those movies that get a Criterion release just to keep like the company in the red, or sorry, out of the red.
My husband had this running gag with his brother that every year for 10 years, his Christmas gift would have a DVD copy of Deep Impact hidden in it somewhere.
That's the worst Easter egg I've ever heard of.
I was thinking we could do a bit of a trivia game about the 90s dinosaur craze. See how many dinosaur-related culture products you can come up with. So definitely Jurassic Park, which came out in 1993, was the apex, kind of the thing that started it all in earnest. But there was arguably something earlier that might have started the dinosaur craze in the late 80s. Can you guess what that was?
Oh, in the late 80s. Okay. I was like, oh, it must be Jim Henson's Dinosaurs. Wait a minute. No, it's not. Late 80s. Let's see. It wouldn't be... Is it Baby, The Secret of the Lost Legend, starring the prisoner as Patrick McGowan?
No.
Okay, that makes sense because I think no more than 5 people ever saw that movie. Dinosaurs.
When you say the Jim Henson one, are you referring to the Disney/Jim Henson sitcom Dinosaurs? Yeah, you're right. It started before Jurassic Park. It started in 1991. So you could arguably say that this dinosaur craze was already well into the works by the time Jurassic Park came along. But even before that was Don Bluth's Land Before Time.
Oh, right. And it's 48 sequels.
Yeah, exactly. So that was in 1988.
Oh, geez. You know what? I totally forgot about that because I think, unlike most kids, I was never raised with Don Bluth movies.
You're better off. They're creepy.
Yeah, I understand there's but I kind of like that because, at least for my taste as a kid, rather than like a really well done, polished movie, like most of the Disney movies of that like Alan Menken musical period, Beauty and the Beast, Aladdin, and so forth, they're like really polished. They're really well made. There's no fat on them for a kids movie at the time. Whereas like Don Bluth movies are like nothing but fat and like weird little curly cues and things that don't add up or make any sense. That's just kind of thrown in. And I kind of appreciate movies that are just weird like that.
Are you a fan of Disney's Black Cauldron?
Actually, yeah, and he worked on that.
Mm-hmm.
I loved that movie as a kid. I have not revisited it.
I don't think it'll hold up.
No, probably not. But I was always more of a Warner Brothers kid than a Disney kid in those days.
So you're a fan of Space Jam?
No.
All right, well, I haven't really thought through this trivia game too much. Can you think of any other dinosaur-related TV shows or movies from the 90s?
I did have something really weird dinosaur-related when I was a kid that I rediscovered last time I was home because my mom's a hoarder, and thus everything I've ever owned is still locked away somewhere in our terrifying basement. But while I was digging through some things, I found a VHS tape for something called Dino Riders.
Oh, yep, that was on my list.
Aha! I don't think I ever watched this show, but I definitely had the toys, and one of the toys came with the pilot. So last time I was home in Newfoundland, I was actually there with my friend Curtis, who is not a dinosaur man, and we watched the tape because none of us, despite having everything that a child would love, because it's dinosaurs, it's robots, it's lasers, so you've got future technology, but of course, since they're dinosaurs, it takes place in the distant past. So you have like cyborgs and robot mercenaries fighting each other because they're like time traveling people from beyond the moon, and they're literally riding dinosaurs as though they are horses as they charge into battle. Some of the dinosaurs have like 7 of 9 cyborg augmentations and facial accoutrement. It's weird. So we put on the tape, and the tape is the pilot for the show. And as the theme song plays, I start to remember the commercials. Like it triggers like a memory. It's like, oh, yeah, I remember this because it has this really distinct Dino Riders harness the power as like the chorus. But then the actual episode itself plays, and it's not that unusual for like shows based on toys at the time.
Yeah.
However, I don't know if this is an error. I don't know if I have a weird tape or if all the tapes were like this because it was just rushed into production. But the episode itself, aside from the commercial bumpers and the opening and closing credits, there are no music or sound effects throughout the whole thing. There's just the voice track. So there'll be like scenes of dinosaurs roaring and like laser battles and all this crazy stuff that's happening. That is just all myself and Curtis could hear was the deadly dull of the VHS tape. And that was it. And because there's so little dialogue in this, it was like we were watching a silent movie that happened to be a color 1980s cartoon, interrupted only by like commercial bumpers that would have some music and be like, "You're watching Dino Riders."
Some other examples from the 90s of dino-related material. There's Barney the Dinosaur.
Oh, yeah.
Of course, there was the sequels. The Lost World came out in 1997, which is the same time Future War came out. And then Jurassic Park 3 came out in 2001, and that seemed to mark the end of the dino craze. In between that, Disney put out a movie called Dinosaur in the year 2000, which was just basically like, look what we can do with CGI. Not too much, it turns out, but look, it's a dinosaur. And Theodore Rex came out in 1995.
Oh, God. That's one of the few movies that I, as an adult, have turned off.
Really? But it has Whoopi Goldberg in it.
I know. You'd think that with the star power of Whoopsie Goldberg, star of Bogus and, I don't know, Sister Act 2, Back in the Habit, that you'd have an excellent movie.
So is Theodore Rex, I think he's like a partner with Whoopi Goldberg, and they're both cops? Is that how that works? Anyway.
Yeah, It's a movie that sounds like it was shot as a joke to be included in a different movie. Like it's one of those things where it's like, oh, that would kind of make sense as a Grindhouse style trailer showing up in something else to show how crappy Hollywood is.
I'd buy that for $1.
Yes. Oh man. Theodore Rex would not be out of place in any Paul Verhoeven movie.
So possibly the last one that people may have forgotten about is the Toronto basketball team, the Raptors, who also were created in 1995. And I have to admit, like, how old was I when that happened? Like 12 or 13? And I even at the time, I was just like, come on, guys, this is a fad. What are you doing calling yourself the Toronto Raptors? I named my basketball team after a movie.
I don't think that could be like any more of its time unless they had been called the Toronto Fanny Packs or the Toronto Urkelbots. But I will ask you this, and we definitely have to include a link to this in the show notes. Have you seen... And you must have seen this, the either in GIF form or in film clip form, of the mascot for the Toronto Raptors on roller skates trying and failing to go down the stairs?
Yes. All my resentment about that stupid name immediately evaporated upon the creation of that clip. It is incredible.
It is a comic masterwork because you have that doofy-looking red mascot. He's on rollerblades. Inherently fun. He tries to go downstairs. You immediately know this is not going to go well. As he starts slipping around, the floppy lower jaw starts wagging around. So he just kind of looks like he's he looks like he's having a good-natured freak out. And you almost hear a sound that's just blah 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 sound as he's like slipping around. He collapses down the stairs, and he's well padded, so you know that the person inside is not getting hurt. He lands on the court, and just as you think his humiliation is over, the tail, which had been upright, deflates comically on his back.
Yeah, it's an inflatable dinosaur costume. It's not a typical latex and fur kind of situation. I guess the dinosaurs don't have fur, but it's a inflatable costume, which I think are relatively new to the mascot game at the time.
Yeah, so he emerged unscathed, but never have I been more happy that someone fell down a flight of stairs.
Well, it would seem that everyone was sick of dinosaurs by Jurassic Park 3, the third sequel, and then the world moved on to vampires. Although,
I should ask you, did you see Jurassic World? I didn't.
No, I didn't either. No.
Yeah, because I guess this goes back to something we had mentioned earlier about being suspicious of nostalgia. I am 100% with you. I've never had something from my childhood, unless it was like if it's something that I still like for instance, I don't know, Jurassic Park holds up. Like you could watch that today and it'd be fine. It's got a great Jeff Goldblum performance in it.
Definitely one of his best.
Oh, yes. I'd say, you know what? I would say that you can make a case that this is the best work of both Jeff Goldblum and one Wayne Knight.
Yep.
But surprisingly, not the best work of Samuel L. Jackson. Anyway.
I love his line, hold on to your buns.
Oh, that's great. That's 100% great. But I think that if you knew in hindsight about Jurassic Park and you heard that Samuel L. Jackson is in it, you would imagine 90 minutes of an angry man yelling at dinosaurs.
Yep.
And also playing his red violin. And sadly, you don't get either of those things. But I'd been curious because most of the positive notices for Jurassic World seem to be like people who are just happy to see Jurassic Park again. They just wanted a slightly newer variation on this thing that already exists and holds up fine. And it makes me kind of want to stick up for Jurassic Park 3, which is a terrible movie. But it does have one incredible moment in it, which is where Sam Neill is asleep on an airplane. And he has a dream that a raptor is sitting next to him in the seat.
Oh my God.
On the plane. And the raptor turns to him and is like, hey man, what's wrong? Like it's the ending of John Carpenter's They Live. And it is the funniest thing I have ever seen in my life. It's weird. Jurassic Park 3, I would say, while it's no contender for the original, I would say it's better than The Lost World, which is a movie I did not enjoy.
No, it was not good, but okay, well, maybe I'll go check it out. So Besides dinosaurs, there are Terminator-like cyborgs in this movie. One of them, and he's the first one, his mullet is a thing to behold, and he looks eerily like Mike Shank from American Movie. Have you seen that?
Oh, God. It's eerie now how much that first cyborg in Future War looks like Mike Shank. But then at the end of the film, the second cyborg is played by a fairly familiar face. It's Robert Zadar.
Is that okay? I don't know anything about him, but I looked at IMDb and he's in another movie that the sci-fi era did called Soul Taker, which I don't remember. So do you know anything about this actor?
I have a bit of a soft spot for Robert Zadar because I own not one, but two Robert Zadar movies on Blu-ray. But yeah, Robert Zadar was not like a celebrated B-movie actor like, say, your Bruce Campbell's, your Tony Todd's, your Jeffrey Combs's, but was like, oh, you know what kind of movie that you're in for when Robert Zadar shows up. And it's usually going to be like Poverty Row and often like laughably bad. He is in such films as Tango and Cash, where he plays a bad guy. Surprise, he plays a thug. He's in Soul Taker, the first episode of season 10, and Historic, in that it features both Mike and Joel in a host segment.
Oh, that's right. Yes. And they reference that at the end credits where Mike takes off and just starts doing a lot of like shadow force perspective jokes that do not land. And I think Crow mentions to Tom, like, I think this is because Joel was here a little while ago. And I was trying to figure out what that meant. Was the attempts at making like force perspective dinosaurs and whatnot more of a Joel thing to do?
I think it's something that happened a lot in the early period of the show, but I get a feeling like, I don't know if this came from like a general sense of, oh, the show is ending, we know our time is up, so maybe we should play a bit more in the theater like we used to. Maybe there was just a general sense of nostalgia with Joel and Frank coming back in Soul Taker. But like, there's another time where this happens. There's a sci-fi era episode, season 10, I think, called The Girl in Gold Boots. Yes, it's the same season, and it's like shortly after Soul Taker. And I think there's a scene in which Mike kind of gets up and mimics playing pool in the theater, and when like the bots are celebrating this, and Mike sits down and delivers the odd line of, "I've been waiting 10 seasons to do that," which just seems wrong for a number of reasons. One, he never did that in the theater, and in the canon of the show, Mike's only been on the Satellite Love for like 4.5 years. I don't know. That must have been like a consideration that they, it was at the 10th anniversary. Did you have any thoughts on why they might have done that or focused on that?
No, I had no clue, other than maybe they were thinking that they were going to be wrapping up soon and wanted to do a little callback charmingly. So yeah. No feelings other than I thought it was weird that they just referenced Joel all of a sudden, and Mike was doing a very un-Mike thing where he was putting an effort into something instead of just watching the movie and casually riffing on it.
Yeah. Well, just finishing up some things on Robert Zadar, there's definitely one role that he is famous, for, or was. Robert Zadar passed away a few years ago. He was the titular Maniac Cop in Maniac Cops 1, 2, and 3. And Maniac Cop is, some movies have fantastic taglines like Jaws the Revenge, which has "this time it's personal." That's the first time that's ever been uttered or written. But Maniac Cop has one of the best taglines for any movie, which is, "You have the right to remain silent forever," which immediately made me think, okay, yep, this is great. This is going to be a great movie. The Maniac Cop trilogy is kind of interesting because it's a hybrid. At least the first two movies are a hybrid because they're equal parts slasher movie and 80s cop action movie. And a lot of the first half of the first Maniac Cop is just kind of like an 80s cop murder mystery. Like, if you didn't know any better, you might think that you had accidentally tuned into an episode of Hunter or something. And it's got a great, very over-the-top 80s TV style action movie score done by Star Trek The Next Generation composer Jay Chataway. It's like really silly and really over the top. And stars Bruce Campbell, Tom Atkins, and Robert Zadar as the titular Maniac Cop. Now, Maniac Cop is an unkillable slasher man because he was a good cop who was sent to jail and murdered in jail for a crime he did not commit. And then, of course, comes back as an undead Maniac Cop. Seems pretty straightforward.
That's how it goes.
Yeah, that's how it works. But the thing that's weird is that you get flashbacks to the cop Matt Cordell, played by Robert Zadar. You get a weird flashback to before he became a maniac cop, and you just see Robert Zadar as he is. And I thought the movie would try to just take advantage of the fact that, like, he's big, he's muscular, and he has a really unusual looking face. So if you cast him in kind of movie Frankenstein's monster roles, like, you're taking advantage of, like, his really unusual look. Because, like, I don't know if he actually has gigantism. I'm not saying that as an insult. I genuinely don't know. But, like, he has a really unusual lower jaw. He's this huge chin, this huge jaw, and resulting in, like, this weird, almost octagonal face. Mm-hmm. And so when he's made up to look like a zombie, like, he's really striking that works for the movie. But when you have flashbacks, it's like, oh, he just happened to be a man with a giant face. It looks really strange. But Maniac Cop is kind of like it's an okay romp, but Maniac Cop 2 is one of the most delightful B movies ever made, in which the Maniac Cop, surprisingly not dead at the end of Maniac Cop 1, teams up with a serial killer to essentially bust back into jail to murder the guys who initially murdered him when he was not a maniac cop.
You would think he would have done that in the first one.
Yeah, the movie spends no time on that, which is weird. It spends too much time being a murder mystery and kind of plays up like a slasher movie with a really good gimmick. But yeah, he's best known for the Maniac Cop trilogy. And so you might call that trilogy the Robert Zadar Wars, which is a joke I wish I could take credit for, even though it is terrible. But Stuart Wellington came up with that on the Flophouse. But there's this great interview on YouTube, which will definitely be in the show notes, where the very first question asked by this very like nervous amateur interviewer at a convention, it looks like, sits down with Robert Zadar and goes, "Now, I just watched Maniac Cop last night. Still holds up. When you got the script for Maniac Cop, Mr. Zadar, did you know that it would be as big a success as it was?" And without batting an eye, Robert Zadar goes, "Yes." And I had no like strong feelings about Robert Zadar the man, but then when I saw that, I was like, Robert Zadar seems like a cool guy. One of the things I found really interesting and unexpected is that there's like a lot of Christian imagery and themes and whatnot going on in Future War, which is a movie about cyborg men with mullets and mustaches, and also have dinosaurs that always change in size and shape.
Yeah, I was really interested in that because it stopped it from being like a Terminator ripoff with dinosaurs. It was this kind of strange Christian angle that was running through it. The main character, Annie, is a nun, or at least a nun in training, and the runaway has somehow absorbed the Bible and can quote it on command, which he does frequently. In fact, apparently this movie, they knew that they had a problem with it because when the director, Anthony Dublev, first shot it, there was just 40 minutes of straight dialogue. And apparently what I'm getting is those exchanges between Annie and the runaway where they're talking about this world that we don't see. They only talk about it, and basically the definition of faith and all of that. I think that's probably where most of the cuts came from. Anyway, so my working theory for this was that this was secretly a Christian movie. And this is something I don't know about. I was raised Catholic, and it's a slightly different cultural upbringing because Catholics don't tend to, I mean, at least they don't make Catholic versions of things the same way that evangelicals do. And my understanding is that the evangelical movement makes Christian versions of pretty much everything, so that you can take the best things from the secular world and make them, acceptable for a deeply Christian populace. So there's lots of examples of this. You could probably think of many, but like Christian versions of popular bands is probably one of them, where it's kind of sounds like the band you like, but there's Christian themes on it. Can you think of any?
I guess I should say Creed, because like Creed is explicitly or as explicit as you can get without outing oneself. That was like a band that was like a Christian band, and it was almost a joke with how much they seemed to deny that they were a Christian band. It's like, no, we're a real band, as though one's faith would make you kind of like not a legit musician.
Yeah, which is surprising because I think like Kendrick Lamar's pretty open about his Christianity a lot of the time, isn't he?
Yeah, but also like musicians talking about their faith, even if it's short-lived. Like, say, remember when Bob Dylan put out that Christian album? Or two? There was Slow Train A-Comin' and something called Saved. But like, there are plenty of musicians who have like been pretty open about it. Like, I would say 80% of George Harrison's solo material is about God. And while I'm not a religious person, like, I actually find like a lot of his songs about his faith to be like really deeply moving.
I think there's a difference between being open about your faith and being categorized as a Christian artist, because that puts you into a parallel kind of industry that by pretty much every definition is inferior to the secular version. Like you are a knockoff, and this is like, you can't help it. If you're deliberately avoiding Hollywood and all of the experience you can get from that, you are not going to be able to create a comparative product. You're just not. So I would love if listeners could enlighten us on this. But so my working theory was that the makers of the show were Christian. They liked these things that were happening in the pop culture, Terminator, Dinosaurs, but they wanted to create a Christian version of it. And this is what they came up with. And my hints were that the main character, Annie, she just feels like what like a rural youth leader would think of as a prostitute. Same with the gang members who were like strangely Disneyfied. Like they were just so like, we're all tough until you say something nice, and then we're all very cooperative. Like just somebody who has no idea what they're talking about and just like wants to like connect with the youths and gets them all together and like, you know what, guys, I know you love your skateboards and your skateboards and your dinosaurs, but I know about a really rad dude by the name of Jesus. I think you're going to think he's pretty cool. You know, like it has that feeling for it. So I did some research to see if there were any Christian connections. I couldn't have been more wrong.
This is a Satanist movie.
Well, in that the people involved with it, like a producer, David Huey, Travis Brooks Stewart, she's Annie in this movie. She didn't do anything else except for one other movie, which also Romero, who is like one of the trio at the beginning.
Yeah.
They were all involved with one other movie that was released the same time called Bikini Hotel.
Whoa, please tell me that's an unexpectedly Christian movie.
I will read you a synopsis that was produced by a fan, not the actual people involved. Samantha Vance inherits the Tiki Hotel when her father dies. She decides to fix it up, but has problems drumming up business. Her friends throw a party at the hotel, and an idea is born to make it the Bikini Hotel, with all the staff members wearing bikinis. This elicits jealousy in the nearby Regent Hotel, who wish to turn Samantha's hotel into a parking lot. It all culminates in a competition where the winner gets to stay.
So what you've described is like the plot of, I think, every 80s boob comedy.
Yep,
in that
exactly.
there's an evil land developer, there's a down on their luck business that's going to make their gimmick, hey, hot babes are doing something ordinary, but they're hot babes, right? And maybe they'll take their tops off. That's like the promise of every one of those films. I think that's delightful. I think that's absolutely, absolutely delightful. Please tell me if any of you listening out there have seen, it's Bikini Hotel, is it?
That's right.
Okay, if you've seen Bikini Hotel, not to be confused with the Great Bikini Off-Road Adventure or Bikini Ski Academy or, I don't know, Bikini Commando. Actually, that's a contradiction in terms, ain't it? But anywho, if you've seen this movie, please tell us if it has any unexpected Christian themes. One thing I would say, I think one of the things that like separates those Christian movies and Christian music in particular, like the Christian movies, I think are kind of sidelined less because of the faith angle, although admittedly no one wants that rammed down their throat, but more because like there's an insistent that these movies have to carry a message and have to be explicitly about that. Like I thought it was kind of interesting that not that long ago there was an attempt to do a high budget remake of Left Behind, the Kirk Cameron movies that were based on Christian books, in which was it that the revelation comes true and like people are left on Earth and the rapture happens. And they did that with like Nicolas Cage and Elizabeth Shue a few years ago. And noticeably, this version really played down the rapture angle outside of a plot element and a few like mentions here or there, but didn't really get into any kind of theological debate. And like Christian music, admittedly, like I didn't have much exposure to it because it's like, well, my mom's side of the family is like Roman Catholic, but my dad, I don't know, he belongs to a Zoroastrian quilting circle. But like, so it was like religion's not a big part of my life. But like, I remember growing up, there was a distinct weirdness about Christian bands, but not necessarily songs that are religious or have a religious intent by the artist, because it's as though they were boxed in. Like if you were a Christian band, you could not sing about anything else, and it had to be explicitly about that. And it was the same thing. You have to carry this message. P.S. This is actually just backdoor conversion. And they're musical missionaries. And that's, I think, more than just making bad music. That's one of the many reasons that people were leery of Creed.
Yeah, I think that's one of the reasons why Christian, like specifically, like intentionally very Christian movies have a hard time with Hollywood, because the sense of like secret conversion is often quite present. That's a good point. And this movie kind of had that feeling like, hey, awesome cyborgs and dinosaurs. Also, you should really think about God.
Yeah, and I think that like Christian themes, like even if we look at something like the Terminator, like it's very common. It's almost like using Freudian imagery just because it makes an impact. It registers with audiences rather than like any kind of specific intent with like Christian imagery and themes. Is like, take for example the Terminator, right? You have a woman who gives birth not through immaculate conception, but through impossible means of a time-traveling man, a time-traveling Michael Biehn, every lady's dream, shows up and has sex with Linda Hamilton, and then she gives birth to the savior of the human race, whose initials are JC. Like, that's not a coincidence. That's deliberately playing with something. But the other JC of James Cameron probably didn't think it's like, this is going to get a lot of people interested in the Bible. Like, it was just playing with that imagery.
This is going to start filling the churches.
Yeah, and even the Christopher Reeve Superman is full of full of kind of Christian imagery. Marlon Brando sends to them his only son. Like, that's there in a big way, but it's also like, I would not consider that, like, this movie is not a backdoor missionary, which sounds like the grossest thing ever out of context.
So we've discussed throughout our uncomfortable relationship with nostalgia, but I have to admit, this movie was made in the 90s, and I was feeling a little bit of nostalgia for all that flannel. Everybody was wearing flannel in this movie. It literally looks like the costume designer just went out and bought like bulk flannel and just made different like vest shapes for everybody. But between that and like the white tanks and like the torn jeans, I was just like, oh man, those were comfortable. I kind of missed that uniform we were all wearing in the 90s.
Yeah, even more than the music that they had for the score playing over the opening Terminator-ish credits. Like, the only way that this film could have been more kind of nostalgic for me is if they, I don't know, play the theme music to Roseanne over the opening credits.
Yeah.
Like, everybody's dressed like half a Darlene, you know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. And just the way it's shot too, like the kind of dusk and dawn scenes that they do, like it actually reminded me a lot of Zombie Nightmare in the way it was shot. And I guess that had weird, strange nostalgia feelings for me too, because that is my favorite MST3K episode. So maybe I was enjoying this movie more for its similarity to that movie than anything else. And also, like, you know, like Daniel Bernhardt, who plays the runaway, he ends up having a pretty impressive career. So like there is some stuff to watch for this movie. Like, it's not entirely dreck, I would say. Yeah,
because isn't he the stunt guy for the John Wick movies? And he's also like possibly the stand-in for the evil version of Wolverine that's in the movie Logan.
Yeah, and he's in Hunger Games too, and I think he was in The Matrix Reloaded. Like I think he started off as just kind of like a low-budget Jean-Claude Van Damme, but he has a really respectable career right now.
Yeah, I gotta say this is where the memory can be really weird because like I hadn't been paying really that much attention after a while to the show around this time, so that when Future War came out and people were kind of talking about it online, because I would just sort of like pick and choose what kind of episodes I wanted to watch while the show was still on the air at that point. And when I saw like the talk of this episode and like a few screen captures from it, I always assumed that this was a Jean-Claude Van Damme movie. And I just remember thinking, oh, that's interesting. Like I actually thought he was in this, and I didn't know that he wasn't until the movie started.
Adam, I think that was intentional.
You think they done played a trick on us?
Yeah, I think it's the phenomenon of a B studio trying to work off the marketing of a stronger studio by bringing out something that looks like a copycat. And I forget what Van Damme movies were out at this point. Maybe Universal Soldier, but it's obviously they're just trying to get people like my dad to be like, oh, that looks like the movie I thought I was getting.
You love Terminator, you'll love Universal Soldier. I definitely think that, let's say, so this movie was made in 94 or 95, but released in 97, right?
Yes.
Okay, so theoretically Time Cop would have been out, which is, for my money, the most entertaining of all Jean-Claude Van Damme movies.
Time Cop, Future War, yeah, I think there's probably a connection there.
And Time Cop, yes, Ron Silver's a great bad guy. Is he as great as Puppet Dinosaurs? I have to reluctantly say no, but yeah, those two movies would make a great double bill, especially if you're like, let's watch the high budget and low budget version of more or less the same idea.
Was there a particular moment in this movie that really stuck out for you?
Honestly, when the first dinosaur falls over, like very early on, the dinosaur suit, which is like, again, a really impressive low budget effect. I know that like the dinosaur is always changing size. They're not like consistent with that in terms of how they shoot it. So like he seems to like his proportions change more times than the interior of the cabin in the Evil Dead movies. But it's actually not a bad effect. It's pretty nice, and it's a charming, like pretty well realized animatronic puppet. And so this movie benefits from when it was made, because had this movie been made even in 1997 when it was released, as opposed to when it was completed and then sat on the shelf, is that this would have been all like Xena Warrior Princess level CGI, which would have been charmless and awful.
Well, I would say yes, the dinosaurs are the best part of this movie, and I think my favorite part is where you just have the trackers just randomly terrorizing people, and there's one where it eats a Forrest J. Ackerman who does a cameo, and for people who don't know,
right?
Yeah, Forrest J. Ackerman is basically your alpha nerd. He was a literary agent for Bradbury and Isaac Asimov and L. Ron Hubbard, actually. And he did Famous Monsters, the magazine, which he's reading in this scene where he's just happily and smugly walking along in a Hawaiian shirt and then notices the dinosaur and gets scared. But that's not my favorite moment. It's when the two kids are playing soccer and the dinosaur just shows up, and then Mike makes a joke about, are you playing soccer, huh? Well, that's kind of naturally my game. Because, of course, it's a Tyrannosaurus Rex and has no hands.
You know what? As much as I love the scene where like the empty dinosaur costume falls off camera and you hear an explosion, as my favorite part of the movie, suddenly it occurs to me that, you know what? That Forrest J. Ackerman cameo is super funny.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's a lot to like about the movie Future War. I think this was a lot of fun. I have no hate in my heart for it. I would gladly watch it on its own, and it's this would be a great movie to just kind of like if you were having like a party and just wanted to have like a movie on, even just for the visuals. Future War would be perfect for that.
Yeah, I agree. This is a fun movie.
Yeah,
it's one of the movies where maybe the movie is better than the MST3K.
Oh, there's no maybe about it. Come on.
I think that about wraps us up for the movie. Chris, do we have any random questions from listeners?
Yes, we did. Let's see. Sharon from Reno asks, So, you're making a mixtape for a friend, and the first track's gotta knock their socks off, right? So what do you choose?
Adam.
All right. Panic comes in because all Beth can think about is Creed.
Arms wide open.
What's this love for? Creed, everybody. I guess I have a couple of different possibilities that I'll throw out there. One is, if you want to start off with a really jaunty, fun pop song, you can often do no better than They Might Be Giants, who are very good at writing succinct, fun pop songs. And I think a song they wrote called Experimental Film, which was a single that debuted on, of all places, the Homestar Runner website. I think that might be the official music video even. But that song would be a great way to kick off a mix CD. But if I'm feeling, you know what? I can show a real deeper level to me if I can show my true heart on this one. I really love film music, film and TV music. I own a lot of soundtracks, have ever since I was about 10. And I would probably start with something bombastic and specific, but something I undeniably love, which would be the theme from the film Capricorn 1 by my favorite composer, the late Jerry Goldsmith. And that is, if you ever want to see Capricorn 1, it's a movie in which O.J. Simpson and Elliot Gould, I believe, it stars both of them, but O.J. Simpson is one of several astronauts who's actually faking the moon landing, but then the American government decides they know too much, so they start hunting down the astronauts. But Beth, what about you? Like, what would you put on a CD? Because that's something I don't think I've heard you talk about much. It's like, where do your musical tastes lie?
Strange Animal by Gowan.
Wait. Is that the same guy who sang that song, A Criminal Mind? Is that guy?
Possibly.
Oh, I don't know.
You're a strange animal.
Oh, it totally is.
Follow. It's also my go-to karaoke song.
My go-to karaoke song has always been, I would put on Gangster's Paradise, but deliberately sing the Weird Al version. Because it's one of those songs that I know all the words to, and I don't need the words in front of me to say it.
But more seriously, I actually find the Go On Strange Animal song really delightful to listen to, and I feel like everyone's like, oh, I know that song. Hey, this is a great song. But nobody actually remembers it until they hear it. And it always puts me in a good mood to hear it. But honestly, if I was starting a mixtape, it would have to be Björk's Army of Me. Because it has the best beginning of a song that has ever been done. It's just earth-shatteringly good. It just sounds like she's just broken a window or something, and it just goes into this drilling bass beat that is so compelling. And I really can't think of a better way to begin a song than that.
I haven't heard that song, but I can confirm that Björk is great.
You confirm that Björk is great.
You know what? I'll have to listen to that after pod, and I'll send you the link too for. I'm pretty sure it's going for that song, A Criminal Mind, because I think you'll love it. It's very bombastic.
It's Canadian, and you can just put it on your mixtape for CanCon requirements.
If you've been affected by the issues on this show, or if you can inform us more about Christian movie making, or if you'd like to ask Beth and Adam a random question, get in touch with us. Email us at info@itsjustashow.com, visit our website at itsjustashow.com, or we're on Twitter at itisjustashow. We'd love to hear from you. And if you want to follow up on anything that was mentioned on this episode, you'll find the links in our show notes at www.itsjustashow.com/episode/4. Okay, Beth, Adam, so to find out what movie we should do next, I hired a haruspics, one of those ancient Roman guys who predicts the future by looking at animal entrails. So this guy, turns out he's a time traveler. I mean, that's how I met him, right? And he specializes in exploded dinosaur entrails. Anyway, he's come back with this prophecy. For the next episode, he predicts that we are going to do Season 11, Episode 2, Cry Wilderness.
Oh, amazing.
Yeah. This is our first foray into the new Netflix season. Beth, have you seen Cry Wilderness at this point?
Yes, this is the one of the two I've seen.
Do you guys remember anything about this episode?
Yes. I remember quite a bit. I saw it about 3 days ago. I look forward to watching it again. That's about all I'll say for now.
Yeah, I would say the same thing. And only to add, this is one of the things I love about Mystery Science, and one of the things that I think the show kind of lost later in its years is that they're showing me movies I have never heard of. Like, I had never heard of this movie before. This was a completely wild and unknown beast to me, and I'm so glad I saw it. And season 11 has quite a few of those.
Yeah, it does.
All right, so until next time, say goodbye, everybody.
Goodbye, and if you're enjoying the show, please tell your friends, and we will miss you until next time.
Yes, goodbye.
Sorry, I just remembered another dinosaur movie. The Super Mario Brothers movie.
Blah, 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 blah.